Jonathan Cooper is a defensive end playing the part of linebacker right now, involved in some of the linebacker drills at Ohio State Pro Day. We just saw him with the back pedal trying to catch some of the passes, interception from the quarterback. Joshua Perry is watching from field level at Ohio State Pro Day. And Joshua, I'm curious as to why you think that Coop, clearly slated as a defensive end prospect at the next level, is working out with the linebackers.
Well, it's interesting because we saw Baron Browning working out with the D-line too, and you see those guys standing next to each other. They're pretty similar in height and weight, and so that's the reason why Jonathan Cooper will be down here with the linebackers. Some teams probably view him as more of an in-between prospect where he's not quite the athlete that they want at the defensive end, but he's not quite kind of the size that you would want to see at a linebacker or vice versa, depending on how you would grade these guys. So you work out at both and you give yourself the most at-bats to be able to show where you belong in the league.
Again, we're talking about versatility, whether it's on the defensive or offensive side of the football. Always going to help you, especially when you're one of those linemen. You see Cooper trying to show off that agility. Looks pretty good right there. We did have the 40 time earlier today. He was one of the first guys to run the 40. Howard, what did you think about this performance from Cooper?
Really, I mean, he wanted to go out and try to get his best time, right, to really show that versatility that he can do other things. Comes out of there really nice. And you see his fans, his teammates are excited about it. And, you know, he can move. He's a guy that's played a lot of football, been banged up, but this is an opportunity. I love the fact that Joshua brought baseball into this thing, and most at-bats you can have and an opportunity at this. So that's good. It's spring training. It's opening days right around the corner. So maybe Mr. Cooper's just trying to figure out where he can be and just give himself the best opportunity to make a team and show his wares for the next level.
Yeah, you guys are true Renaissance men. You're speaking French over here. Joshua's talking baseball alongside with football. And obviously we're going to continue with these individual workouts. And I believe we just saw a little bit of Baron Browning, a guy who, Howard, has been one of the more impressive. Looks like Tough Borland now is next to go. You know, this Ohio State linebacking core took a little bit of heat over the last couple of years. I think especially in pass coverage. A couple of years back, they gave up a ton of big plays. But whether it's Borland, whether it's Warner, whether it's a guy like Browning, who obviously didn't play as much because of the injuries, but Warner and Borland, these guys have a ton of reps under their belts, and that's got to help.
Yeah, you can't substitute that. You know, they have a body of work that the scouts can take a look at. These are guys that, to me, have to solidify themselves in the special team role, but can have the ability to step in and play because, you know, Warren's been playing since his freshman. Borland's been playing since his freshman. These guys have been out there and understand what it takes and playing, you know, at a very high level. So for them to have that opportunity is outstanding. You're seeing Cooper doing some of the linebacker work. You see he's just not as fluid as some of the other guys are when it comes to being able to stick that foot in the ground and change directions. But that's just something he has to continue to work on and some of the things that these scouts want to see him do.
Rob Rang has 3 Ohio State linebackers projected to go in the first 5 rounds, including Browning, who I think is probably helping his stock a lot today, hanging out there with Jonathan Cooper. Mentioned the injuries to Justin Hilliard, but a guy who, if he can pass all the physicals and show that he is healthy, he also has an absolute ton of upside. So this linebacking core could potentially have the last laugh when it comes to draft day.
Yeah, may not get drafted as high as they would have liked and imagined, but I think all have the ability to have long NFL careers, and that's the important part of it. Now seeing an opportunity to work on some of the pass rush drills, you know, being able to use that rip technique and be able to accelerate past the defender or past that dummy and find the quarterback and make a play.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is you focus on quarterbacks and systems, and what system is a quarterback going to go into. It means just as much to a linebacker. Are you playing a 3-4? Are you playing a 4-3? Do they want you to be a guy who can cover and rush? Are you simply a sideline to sideline heat-seeking missile? All of those things matter, and all of those things matter to the scouts and GMs who have specific ideas of what individual guys can do.
And that's an important part, and that's why you'll see Browning working in so many different positions because, you know, from a scout standpoint, you're looking at his physical build, and then you look at the numbers that he's put up, and sure, it may not have matched as far as his production on the field. He had a much better year this year, but when you watch him go through some of these drills, we see Tough Borland going now, when you see Browning go through this drill, you're going to say, this dude is special. You see Warner going and really showed that burst, but now you'll see Browning and just his ability to explode. And that's what Ohio State fans have wanted to see on every single play when he's been out there.
Joshua Perry is watching this from field level. And Joshua, obviously, stylistically, Browning and Pete Warner, very different styles of linebackers. But you like what you've seen from Pete Warner today.
Definitely. Pete's standing out to me right now just as a guy who looks pretty smooth overall. And, you know, Luke Fickell, who was my linebacker coach here at Ohio State, always used to say about drill work, smooth is fast. And so he's looking like a really good athlete. Howard, you talked about it, but that burst coming off of the drill I think is huge too. He's got more explosion than people give him credit for, and it shows up on the tape when you watch it. But just in terms of the workout overall, he's looking really smooth right now.
Joshua, he's known as a guy with straight line speed. And as we look at some of the performances from his day to day, I think the question was, would he look fluid? And you used the word smooth. And that's interesting to me because I think one of the criticisms of Warner throughout his career is that he can be at times a bit stiff. You say that you are not seeing that at all today in his workout.
Yeah, and I never really saw it from him at Ohio State either. I thought that was just a poor criticism of him because he was the linebacker. Anytime it was time to go man-to-man on a guy like Pat Freiermuth, who's going to be one of the best tight ends in the draft, Pete Warner was covering him. He did it 2 years in a row, and you don't do that with a guy that you feel like is stiff, who can't play in space. Pete's always been a guy who I thought was a pretty fluid athlete. He's always been pretty smooth. He was a safety in high school, and now he comes out here today and shows off that athletic ability in the drill work.
Howard, I think it's interesting that Joshua brings up the fact that he was a safety in high school and not an overly big linebacker. But again, you start to project to today's NFL and the fact that you see a lot of linebackers who are not as big as they were, say, 5-10 years ago, but they can get sideline to sideline. They are explosive. They have straight line speed. That really describes the skill set of Pete Warner.
Yeah, we've been talking the last couple of years about how the college offense has gone to the pro level, right? Putting people in space, putting defenders in conflict. And what they've found at the NFL level is they've gone to more of those linebackers and safeties that also have that ability to cover. So no longer are they necessarily in a lot of systems these big physical linebackers that come downhill, but they have to be able to get out in space, need to be able to make tackles, need to be able to run underneath some of these slot receivers that are going to be running to the sideline to try to help defend those things. And Pete's been one of those guys that since he's been there, he's made plays. And that's the thing that stands out to me. And sure, there have been some times in this scheme where he's been put in bad situations for a linebacker versus a slot receiver, some of those things that were going on the last couple of years. But when you watch him, his physical gifts to be able to cover tight ends, to be able to come and cover backs out of the backfield is something that's going to impress the guys at the next level because you need players that can make plays in space.
Now, he's listed on Ohio State's roster at 6'3", 240. I think he would probably officially measure closer to 6'2" and maybe in that 235 range. And you know that's very similar to, and I'm not trying to draw a comparison to a guy who I think is a fringe Hall of Famer, but Levante David, the former Nebraska linebacker, is that exact same size. Mm-hmm. And he is a straight line speed guy who goes sideline to sideline, is really good in coverage, and has been among the nation's or the NFL's leaders in tackles now for, what, a decade?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can play anywhere near like that with a similar skill set, you're going to have yourself a very long and successful NFL career.
Yeah, we just saw him do a great job dropping into the route and then playing out to the flat. He's just a smooth athlete. You heard Joshua talk about that, and he just showed you that in that particular rep. And talk about going out and running 4.6. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think a lot of people get confused and think everybody's supposed to run 4.4 and 4.3. 4.6 is still fast. It is fast enough to play in the National Football League, gives yourself an opportunity to go out and compete.
Well, again, I hate to make this comparison, but you know what Levante David ran his 40 in?
4.6.
That's correct.
Okay.
So maybe I am making that comparison, and I don't apologize for it anymore. Joshua Perry knows a thing or two about what 40 times truly mean for linebackers, Joshua.
Yeah, it's really interesting, you know, because we got guys out here now. We saw Micah Parsons last week going out there running 4.3, and Darren Lee back when I was coming out was running a 4.4, and people are starting to normalize that for a linebacker, but The reality of the situation is, as an inside linebacker, when I was at the combine, I ran in the mid 4.6s, and that was a top 5 time for an inside linebacker at the combine for that year. It's not bad to be in the 4.6s, plenty athletic enough to play in the National Football League.
I'm sorry, did you just say 4.3? I mean, I know I saw it. I know I watched it. But really, Micah Parsons, I mean, that is a freak of nature. And to your point, Josh, the average combine speed of a linebacker in 2019 was 4.64. So if you are 4.6 flat, if you're high 4.5s, you're a little bit above the mean. And if Pete Warner is there, he is a guy that is clearly showing that he has the athletic ability to do this at the next level.
Yeah, get an opportunity here to watch a defensive lineman in Cooper's, try to show his wares, just show him backpedal, drop into coverage, run underneath some routes, see how smooth he can be here.
So, yeah, Howard, I see what you're saying. It's just not quite as smooth as a linebacker. Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers, they love to go defense in the first round. I mean, forever they've gone defense in the first round. I'm not suggesting that any of these guys are going to be first-round picks, but you're clearly watching guys in Jonathan Cooper, in Baron Browning, who are trying to show their versatility, that they can play at multiple levels. And in today's NFL, Howard, you know exactly how important that is.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get another shot of Browning doing some of that footwork, where he's able to show that he can drop into coverage and then slide into that zone and then break out to the flat. Because, again, I keep going back to, and this is someone that I was really wanted to see work out today, because I know the type of athletics. I've seen it, right? And just haven't seen it consistently enough for whatever reason. But a guy whose attributes really translate well, I think, to the National Football League. Getting into the right system, getting into the right scheme is going to be very important. But again, I see a lot of these guys will make their mark on special teams early and then can develop into possible real contributors and starters in this league.
Well, of the 45 players drafted out of Ohio State over the last 5 NFL drafts, 11 were defensive players taken in the first round. Howard, you brought up earlier when we were off camera that it's the first time in a long time we haven't seen an Ohio State defensive back dominating pro day or dominating the headlines leading up to the draft. You want to make some headlines? How about you get ready for your vertical jump as a linebacker and you start to think about jumping to a number that begins not with a 3, but with a 4. And that's what Baron Browning did earlier today. The vertical leap measured. Of course, these numbers are unofficial at 40. With his best attempt.
He's that type of athlete.
That is legit jumping out of the gym.
Mm-hmm. At what, 6'4", 240, 250?
I mean, it may not be Josh Matterbebe or Rondale Moore, but now I'm comparing you with some of the most athletic freaks at wide receiver, and you're a guy who plays linebacker. Oh, let's go to another guy who I'm sure jumped about 45, 50 feet at his pro day, Joshua Perry, right?
Yeah, right. I wish I did. I was more of a broad jump guy than I was a vertical jump guy, but both of those are testing the explosion, and that's exactly what Baron Browning showed when he went out there. I was watching it. They had a live feed in here from the weight room onto the field, and as I watched, I'm like, man, that looks like a really good jump. And they said 40 inches. I was like, yeah, that's a really good jump. You could kind of see everybody perk up a little bit on the indoor here. Very, very impressive.
And again, Baron Browning have a little bit of a post-workout conversation with Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin. You could be in a worse position as a defensive player than being drafted by the Steelers. Browning impressing Tomlin and everybody else on hand at Ohio State Pro Day.